All right. Welcome to our second episode of our Falcon West podcast. Until we have a better name for it, we're going to call it that. Mike Tanghe, our president's on with me. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you, Peter.
All right. Holidays are over. It's January 5th as we're recording this. I know everyone's anxious to get the year started. At least I know I am, and excited to kind of hit the ground running today on this Monday. But anyways, I kind of wanted to hand it over to you to kind of start. I'm going to let you kind of guide this second episode now that you've kind of gone through it once.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Peter. Well, and I'll actually throw it back to you on just for our listeners, letting them know why we started this podcast. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your background in it, how you recruited me to the fold, and in what our goals are in 2026 for this podcast.
Yeah, sure. Good question. So this was last year in April. We have our oil and gas division hired on Wade Spear. He's a drilling engineer, and we were recording some videos over Zoom to just be asking him questions like, basic questions like what kinds of drill bits are there, and how does this work in the industry, or give me the differences between like what's MPD, what's all these technical terms, because I wanted to know more about our clients and what they do on a regular basis. And then I kind of figured out, well, let's try recording these. So long story short, I started recording episodes with him. We started talking with other people in the industry and sort of have a podcast going. So if you go to localenergy.com or, come across it in some fashion, which is pretty cool.
That's amazing.
And
10,000.
yeah, it's cool. It's really fun. TikTok is our biggest. It's like 50% of that. There's 5,000 followers on TikTok, which, from am I going to be a superstar in there? No, there's people with millions of followers, but for oil and gas specific conversations, that's pretty cool. So anyways, long story short, that's been fun. Our goal with this podcast was to kind of bring some of that conversation, but maybe turn it more towards the insurance conversation. And also my thing was, because we're a virtual company, being able to sort of talk to and I guess be in front of our employees and our like all of our partners and everyone more on a regular basis, right? Because we get together for like our quarterly meetings, but I think having like a once a week session where it's you and me talking, or me and Bill, or me and an account manager, or you and somebody else even, right, at some point, that's just talking about certain things, or bringing in partners that we want to talk with about certain aspects of the industry. So there's so many different ways to run this, but really the idea is, what can we talk about that's going on in the industry with the company, and just be more consistent with communicating in a medium that's maybe not email. So I don't know, that's what I'm thinking, but maybe you have a different take.
No, I think that's spot on with my thoughts on this and what I hope to gain from it. I'll just circle back a little bit to what you've done with local energy. And to my knowledge, is that your first time doing any sort of podcast? Like, had you done anything in the
Ugh.
past?
I tried doing one when I started. So like 3 years ago, I bought the domain Insurance Market Update, and I wanted to like share the California home insurance market with people. The problem was I was never sharing any good news, so it was not really fun to write.
The Grim
So
Reaper
I
of podcast, right?
Yeah, it was tough. It was a tough subject. So I got like 3,000 subscribers on that newsletter, but it was a
Wow.
lot of people that were just grumpy about their premiums and stuff, and so
Yeah.
discontinued that pretty quickly. And the other thing was I really wanted to pivot more into commercial personally. That was kind of my goal, but there's so many ways. So yeah, this was really my first, like, okay, I'm going to stick with this for 6 months and see what happens. And I was lucky because Wade was willing to sort of, throw his hat in the ring with me. And I don't think I could have done it on my own. Truly, without Wade, I would not have been able to keep it going for as long as we've been doing it. So it'll be a year in April, and our hope is to get to a year. And then this one, obviously, I think, we set a target for doing the same thing, and then we'll see what the results are. But I mean, if I just look at, all the responses that we got off the first one just from our team, I mean, this is really cool. So
Yeah. And what I find interesting about is just that reach, right? If you and Wade were to, maybe get a customer on the phone or a conversation, but the ability of the medium to allow you to just talk, have a message, but then have
yeah.
people be able to search that out and find that audience of people that, we did not know of before. To me, that's very, very powerful. and especially looking at the success you've had with the local energy podcast and that reach you've had. So for this Falcon West podcast that we're doing now, my goal is first and foremost to, as you said, to communicate to our team members, just so they know what's going on in my head, what's going on in your head, what are some things that we find interesting, and all things that we could have in one-on-one conversations with people. But as our team continues to grow, it's just not feasible either on their end or on our end to have those one-on-one conversations. So
Yeah.
even though this doesn't quite replace one-on-one conversations, it does allow people to tune in on their own time to see, what is my company, what are the leaders of my company thinking, what are some things that they're exploring, and allow people to see that. So that would be my primary goal. And then
Yeah.
secondary goal from that is we have added great people to our team by word of mouth. And that's when a colleague recommends someone that they know is either looking for a job or looking for a change in their scenery, or a marketing rep or someone we know. And the idea with that podcast is let's get this out there so that we can find more people that are thinking like we do. And
Yeah.
some of the topics we'll cover later today, we'll delve a little bit deeper into that. But if we have the ability for people to find us that resonate with what we're doing, find commonality in that, we'd love to have conversations with those people. And then when the timing's right, offer them an opportunity here at our firm.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we've got some crazy, wouldn't say crazy, but we've got some growth goals this year, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we've been growing consistently, but we're going to need more people. And I was just looking at, this morning, open my laptop, going through things for our energy meeting later today. I mean, I need more people just to like work through the amount of leads I have, right? It's like, the 2 people, 3 people I have, it's like, we have so much opportunity. And so anyways, hopefully maybe this does attract some people to work with us and they can put a face to the name a little quicker. So, but speaking of those other topics, so one thing that you and I have kind of, I don't know, sent a couple emails about, because it's been kind of in the news for insurance, at least if you're following insurance news, which that's a pretty niche thing to follow. But Howden. So Howden has, I don't want to say invaded the United States, but they started setting up offices here. I think it was 2 weeks ago now, but they basically poached 200 of Brown and Brown's brokers. So a lot going on there. I think there's definitely a lot of shade being thrown from each side. But I want to hear your take on it, and hopefully I set the premise up for it correctly. But I mean, it's definitely an interesting thing that's unfolding in front of us here.
Yeah. 100%. In right or wrong, is insurance junkies follow these things closely because they do have an impact on, and specifically for us, we feel these types of things create more opportunities for clients that seek out firms like us. And then we also feel that this will also create more opportunities for people who don't want to necessarily be at one of those large brokerages and would rather work for a firm that's more our size and does things a little bit differently. But yeah, let's do a little deep dive in the Howden news. So,
Let's do it.
all right. So just as background for those that may not be familiar with all of it, but Howden, they're a company that's been around since 1994. They do a little over 4 billion in revenue. They have 20,000 employees in over 55 countries. And up until the year 2020, they were operating under the name Hyperion, which we'll kind of tie in later as to why that's interesting. So although they did some business in the U.S., they did not have a significant presence in the U.S., which is not even arguably, it is the largest insurance marketplace in the world. So Howden tried to, they're a company that wants to grow. They tried the traditional way of how our larger peers have pursued market share, which is via acquisition. And they quite publicly lost bid on Risk Strategies, where they're offering $10 billion to buy the company that ultimately selected Brown and Brown as their partner. So that happened early 2025. Over the past, call it 8-9 months, there's been several well-publicized cases of targeting divisions of their peers, of their competitors. So they've gone after Aon. And recall how I said they operated under the name Hyperion until 2020. Aon had actually bought David Howden's grandfather's company called the Howden Group a number of years back and formally retired the name in 2020. And when David Howden asked Aon if he could use that name, they basically said, sure, why not have the name. Set in 2020. So just kind of interesting soap opera like
Yeah, yeah.
backstory on who are the parties in this. So they targeted divisions of Aon, Marsh, Willis, and then, as you mentioned, most recently Brown and Brown, which a week before Christmas, 200 of their employees, all on the same day, put in their mass resignation letter and left the company. And since then, all those companies mentioned, Marsh, Willis, Aon, Brown and Brown, have filed lawsuits against Howden, alleging unfair business practices, among other things.
Gosh.
And there's a history on this. Howden has settled lawsuits in the past where they've issued apologies, and these are, direct quotes from their settlements, that they've engaged in unlawful recruitment. They've expressed regret for actions that they've taken.
Hmm.
Judges in those cases have even commented or observed that companies that Howden appears to be looking at the damages and these settlements that they're paying as a cost of recruitment.
Right.
So
Huh.
what makes this strategy interesting is if you look at the acquisition, the M&A marketplace right now among the larger companies, they all know they can grow at maybe 5 to 8% organically in a hard market, but to get that double-digit growth, they grow via acquisition. In the multiples that have been paid on these acquisitions, for a larger, well-run firm, that could be 7 to 10 times the revenue of that company. In fact, Jim Hayes, who had led this 200-person defection from Brown and Brown to Howden, he sold his company that he had back 7 years ago to Brown and Brown, and he got a 7 times multiple on his $100 million revenue company. Sold it for $700 million. Not a bad payday
No kidding.
on that for a person who values the dollar amount as a sign of a successful transaction. Again, what's interesting about this, though, is the litigation hasn't caught up with these team lists. So what do I mean by that? The penalties aren't the same as the values that these firms are getting from it. So damages in these types of instances are usually 1 to 3 times annual revenue. So now you have these PE firms that are funding. So Howden has its
Hmm.
private investors. It's a privately held company, but has investors. And basically they're saying, why would we go out and buy these companies? We tried with risk strategies, we lost. Let's just go out and poach because the penalty is, less than half the cost on this. So it brings up, we'll call that an interesting strategy. But when I say interesting, I don't mean that, in my opinion, that's the right strategy. So
Hmm.
to me, it's just another instance of these PE firms and the damages they do to our industry as they chase that dollar.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing is that it works. Like I don't know. That's until the damages are, I don't know, more substantiated, but I don't even know where that, and is it, because even at that, I mean, they're still going to take the risk. So I don't know.
Yeah. So you
I'm not
bring up a good
really,
point. And I'll share an analogy with you of one of my favorite movies of all times. There's a movie called The Castle. It's an Australian comedy from the 90s.
okay.
Have you heard of
Never
it?
seen it. Never,
Okay.
never.
If you asked 100 people, most would say they haven't seen it. And they're
Okay.
all missing out, in my opinion. But
Okay.
the premise of this movie is there's a guy, Daryl Kerrigan, who lives with his family, and he lives in a neighborhood at the end of a runway in kind of rural Australia. And the news that comes out is the airport wants to expand, and they want to buy out all the people who live at the end of the runway. And all his neighbors are ecstatic because they're thinking, oh my gosh, no one ever wanted to buy this house because there's all these planes flying right overhead, and they're looking at it like the greatest thing ever. And Daryl Kerrigan, his response is, no, I don't want to sell. Like, this is my home. This is my castle. This is where I raised
Yeah.
my family.
Yeah.
And so he's the only holdout in the neighborhood on it. And then the airport essentially takes us home by eminent domain, and he fights it. And everyone's thinking like he's this crazy guy. And there's a very funny scene in the movie where his wife is trying to explain to his kids how she met uh, their father and why he appealed to her. In this scene, the wife's saying how when she first met their father, she was on a date with another guy. And Daryl came and started chatting her up. And she said, hey, I'm on a date with someone else. And he instantly said, I'm not going to cut into someone else's lunch. That was his response, and politely walked away. And the wife is like, I met the man I'm going to marry. This man has principles. So my point with that story is Howden is essentially cutting other people's lunch.
Yeah, yeah.
And in my eyes, and in the eyes of Daryl Kerrigan and his castle,
Hmm.
eventually they're going to reap what they sow.
Yeah,
They may feel like they're winning a battle for talent right now, but to me, that's just a race to the bottom. And if that motivation to you and your firm is how can I maximize revenue, but at the expense of my clients or at the expense of the relationships of my peers, to me, you're in the wrong industry. You should
yeah,
probably go back to Wall Street and
yeah,
leave insurance as it is.
yeah. I mean, I always one of my I don't know my lifetime people that I've always followed is like Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, and I always kind of like think through business like they do, and it's like if they wouldn't do it this way, then I wouldn't do it that way, and I just kind of look at how they're handling. It's like yeah, Charlie Buffett or Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett made a ton of money, but they would not have done it, with the Howden playbook, right? So,
Yeah,
and yeah, they made a lot of money with Geico, but Geico didn't get where it was today, through the Howden practice, right? So they built it the right way, they grew it the right way. I don't know. So,
yeah.
and we want to keep growing Falcon West the right way, which is maybe a little slower, but you find the right people, you find good clients, and you keep moving day by day.
100%. And if you look at the companies that are suing Howden right now, so Marsh, Willis, Aon, and if you feel
Yeah,
sorry for those companies, in my opinion, don't.
yeah.
You're probably a little too young for this, Peter, but if the name Elliott Spitzer and the bid rigging scandals that happened in 2004
Oh,
come to
those.
mind, but if you were in insurance back then, you knew it because it was all over the news. But effectively, in these three companies were the main Marsh, Willis, Aon were the main ringleaders in this.
Uh-huh.
What they were doing was soliciting sham quotes from insurance companies, presenting those quotes to their clients, saying, "Hey, we got you three quotes." But they were bid rigging, and they were
Huh.
effectively direct. It was like the tail wagging the dog, telling the
Whoa.
insureds which ones and they were doing it to extract higher commissions. They would go to each of these insurers and say, "Hey, we want X amount of percentage commission from you." And if they didn't do it, then they weren't placing the business with them. And then they were, so again, that whole point of reaping what you sow, again, if your race is, hey, we want to try and get the maximum amount of money from our clients, from our peers, from our insurers, that's going to come around and get you. You know,
Wow. I have,
conversely, to your point,
yeah.
if you're someone who always is going to put the client needs first, who values that trust that clients give us, who fights on behalf of the clients to retain that trust, those people are a good fit at our agency. And there are no shortage of prospects out there that are looking for those types of values in their broker. So if anything that we can take away from this Howden is the big companies will continue to do what they've always done in that space. If that's something that doesn't resonate with you or doesn't align with your beliefs, those are the people that we want to talk with who will do well at our agency.
Yeah. That's I'll have to do some research on that. That's fascinating though about the bid rigging. I never even knew, like, there's certain things you're just like, you don't know because you wouldn't have thought of it. Just, that's impressive. Next level. Well, that's kind of a great summary of what's going on. And we'll kind of track that and, we'll see what happens with Howden and Brown and the rest of the storyline as it kind of unfolds over the next couple. Well, it could take some time. I mean, it could be months, it could be years. Who knows, right?
Yep.
On that one. So, well, the last thing we have to go through is sort of a recap on our Falcon West Academy for 2025 and looking forward to 2026. And so, um, uh, 2024, I think it was October, sort of had this idea. It might have been even sooner than that of having a kind of a training ground for professional rugby players, that are looking to, getting out of professional rugby, going to a second career. And so we developed the academy and we were able to somehow fit in 4 of our 12-week sessions in the first year, which was actually, it was like 3.5 because we still have a couple weeks left of the fourth one that we're wrapping up here in January. But nonetheless, I mean, we got to, really push through and I, for everyone that was in the first group, I mean, you probably wouldn't recognize the material in the fourth because we just modified and made so many adjustments and improvements. The feedback was fantastic. So anyways, I just wanted to get your thoughts on, obviously the program has been successful up to this point, and I'm confident, this upcoming year we're going to run 3 sessions. We're hoping to have 12 rugby athletes going through that with us, and then obviously we've had some hires out of that too. Maceo Brown being a broker with us now, and we have Carl Keene and then Bart Van Walen joined us as well. So we got some great people that are working alongside us. but I want to get some thoughts from you.
Looking back on what you were able to accomplish in this past year with the academy, I would just say it far exceeded any of my hopes or expectations with it. Uh, to me, I look at, what are some of the core things that are going to kind of guarantee our future success, in the academy just plays a really large part of it. Um, you know, just as we were talking about how to, why are they doing this? They're looking to poach talent because they feel they can't find it elsewhere. So our approach on that is, hey, we think we can bring in talented people that are interested in the insurance industry. We can teach them sales, we can teach them insurance, and then we can show them here is a path that others have followed to great
Hmm.
success and give them all the tools that they need to do. And then effectively, we're putting it back 100% control in that particular individual, that if they succeed, it'll be because of them and all that they've been given. If they
Yep.
don't succeed, it's 100% on them because, again, we've given them all that they need to do to have that success. And if
Yep.
you're a person coming in looking to start a career, I mean, that's what you want. You want to be able to be trained. You want to be able to see, are there other people in this position that were here before me and that are succeeding now? Because that's a proven path. And
Yep.
then again, it gets to be, okay, what's that individual going to do with this opportunity in front of them? So as I look back on the academy, it's a combination of our virtual operations, so the ability to offer it to people wherever they are, in the world right now. We have some current academy members that are playing in Premiership, the highest level of English rugby right now.
Yeah.
And it's the ability to take those knowledge, take those lessons. Um, and like you said, the content from our first class to the last class has dramatically changed. But that's insurance. That's life is, what have you learned? How do you evolve?
Mhm.
And how do you get better? And that's no different than an athlete as well. If you look at their
Yeah.
form at the beginning of their season versus at the tail end of the season, if we're going to compare ourselves to athletes in this, maybe we're right now at the second quarter or end of the first quarter, but we're certainly better than we were at the start of the game.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
I couldn't be more excited about it. I think it's a massive differentiator for our firm. I
Hmm.
think it's a massive differentiator for our future in that, to be successful in insurance as a producer, it's a 2-year process to get to that, to kind of get over that hump. And, we're giving our potential candidates the ability to, here's how to do it. And then just seeing, is this a good fit for them? So
Yep.
couldn't be more excited than always. It's fantastic to support the game of rugby.
Oh yeah. No, it's gonna be I'm excited for 26. I think more than any other year. I mean, I think I say at the beginning of every year, but 26, I'm just like, man, there's so much work that we've put in to kind of get this foundation, and I feel like we're ready to run, you know? So I don't know. I feel like our first game's around the corner. It feels good.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, I think that's all we have for today. Really, Mike, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join and just do this with us. This is just a truly a great thing we're doing. So, um, anyways, I know a lot of you guys are watching this on YouTube. Leave comments, follow us if you are on YouTube. We obviously would love to know your name suggestions if you haven't submitted them yet. We need to kind of figure something out. Falcon West podcast just doesn't really it doesn't excite anybody, you know? So we need something exciting, energizing, but would love your thoughts on that too. So we'll see you guys again next week. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Peter.